World War II had entered its final phase, and Germany, losing ground on every front, was searching for new ways to deliver a decisive blow. In the skies over Britain and Western Europe, a new weapon appeared: the V-1 flying bomb, a missile capable of striking cities hundreds of kilometers away. Known to the British as the buzz bomb, these mechanical horrors instilled fear wherever they fell. London, Antwerp, Lille, thousands of civilians were under constant threat. Every morning, newspapers reported the destruction left by V-1s. Panic spread, and Allied commanders were desperate to find ways to counter the threat. Anti-aircraft defenses operated around the clock. Flak guns, fighter planes, and acoustic detection systems tried to intercept the fast-moving missiles. Yet initially, only a small fraction were destroyed. Losses and damages mounted, prompting strategists to consider radical solutions. It was during this period that American engineers developed a revolutionary mechanism: the variable time, VT fuse, a proximity fuse that detonated not on impact, but when the projectile approached its target. This innovation dramatically increased interception accuracy. The secrecy surrounding the VT fuse was absolute. The Germans had no idea such technology existed. Their V-1 rockets seemed unstoppable, following predetermined trajectories, while British and American gunners struggled to shoot them down. Before the VT fuse, only about 30 to 40% of V-1s were destroyed, leaving hundreds of potential casualties. Initial tests of the VT fuse, in real combat conditions, exceeded expectations. American engineers worked with British anti-aircraft units, equipping shells with experimental fuses. Results were astonishing. Even the first shots had a marked increase in effectiveness. The fuse allowed shells to explode at the optimal height, minimizing ground damage. The climax came on the day when the VT fuse was deployed at full scale. Germany had launched dozens of V-1s, expecting to wreak havoc. Instead, 82% of all rockets were destroyed before reaching their targets. Civilians in London watched as the missiles fell harmlessly into fields or the sea. For the first time, the air defense system worked with near-perfect precision. German commanders were stunned, though they had no understanding of the reasons behind their failure. For the Allies, this was a technological triumph. The VT fuse transformed the chaotic battle against V-1s into a controlled operation. Every gun, every shell, became part of a synchronized network. The effect was immediate. Thousands of lives were saved. Cities remained largely intact, and morale soared. American engineers who developed the VT fuse became unsung heroes of the war effort. Their invention allowed anti-aircraft batteries to intercept missiles at a safe distance, significantly reducing risk to Allied personnel. The principle of proximity detonation made the system predictable for the Allies and utterly unforeseen by the Germans. Germany's response was frantic but futile. They adjusted launch angles, changed altitudes, and increased missile numbers, but nothing worked. The Allied system remained steps ahead, showcasing technological superiority as a decisive factor in the failure of Germany's missile campaign. After the initial success of the VT fuse in combat, Allied command began full-scale implementation of the technology. American engineers worked tirelessly, improving the fuses and adapting them to various anti-aircraft shells. Each battery received precise instructions on installing the new fuses and calculating the optimal detonation height. Every detail was meticulously planned, from the angle of the gun to the precise timing of the explosion along the V-1's trajectory. The scientific team in charge of the VT fuse understood that even a small error could cost thousands of lives. They analyzed the speed and trajectory of each rocket, taking into account weather conditions, wind, and atmospheric pressure. These calculations were compiled into tables and transmitted to officers on the batteries. Anti-aircraft tactics became systematic and predictable, transforming what was once a chaotic defensive effort into a coordinated operation where every battery acted as part of a network, and every shot had a high chance of success. Over the following weeks, the Germans noticed anomalies. Their V-1 rockets were falling more often than expected, and the destruction they intended to cause was sharply reduced. Pilots and Luftwaffe officers could not explain the sudden drop in effectiveness. The VT fuse remained a complete secret. Even intercepted Allied communications offered no clues. German engineers and strategists were baffled by the precision and coordination of the anti-aircraft network. On the day when a record number of V-1s were launched, the results were remarkable. Over 80% of the missiles were intercepted before reaching their targets. London, which had previously suffered relentless bombardment, experienced almost no impact. The mid-air explosions created warning shock waves, signaling danger without harming civilians on the ground. Each missile destroyed meant saved homes, hospitals, and schools, as well as preserved civilian morale. This operation highlighted the human effort behind the technology. Young soldiers, some barely adults, tracked missiles on radar, adjusted aiming solutions, and relayed trajectory data. Officers in command centers verified calculations and directed fire, while engineers updated firing tables with the latest observations. Every successful interception was the result of an extraordinary collaboration between people and machines. Meanwhile, German officers struggled to understand why their V-1 campaign had suddenly lost its power. They experimented with launch angles, altitudes, and mass attacks, but nothing worked. The Allied system always remained one step ahead. This technological advantage became a key reason for the failure of Germany's missile strategy in Western Europe. The VT fuse not only saved lives, but also had strategic implications. With V-1 attacks largely neutralized, Allied airfields, supply lines, and urban infrastructure were protected, freeing resources for offensives elsewhere. It demonstrated that intellectual and technological superiority could outweigh numerical advantage and brute force. The day 82% of V-1s were intercepted entered history as one of the most effective air defense operations of World War II. It showed that war is not only fought on the battlefield. Scientists, engineers, and secret technologies can decisively shape outcomes. By the end of the conflict, German V-1 operations were largely neutralized. The VT fuse had saved countless lives, minimized destruction, and provided a strategic edge to the Allies. It stands as one of the most brilliant examples of how innovation and secrecy can alter the course of history. As 1945 began, the VT fuse had become standard across all Allied anti-aircraft batteries in Western Europe. Every morning, these units were ready to intercept new waves of V-1 rockets. The technology consistently proved its effectiveness, sometimes destroying 80 to 85% of incoming missiles during large-scale attacks. This meant that German rockets were losing their most dangerous qualities: surprise and destructive power. For civilians, the system was life-saving. Residents of London and surrounding areas finally experienced a measure of security. Homes, schools, and hospitals remained intact. The psychological impact was just as important as the physical. Knowing that cities could be defended against V-1 strikes boosted morale and strengthened civilian resolve during the war. American engineers and British officers continued to refine the system. Each improvement was carefully tested, analyzing missile trajectories and updating firing protocols. Anti-aircraft operations became a highly coordinated network, with each shot calculated to maximize interception while minimizing risks to the ground. This level of precision demonstrated how innovation, strategy, and teamwork could dramatically influence the outcome of combat operations. German commanders, increasingly desperate, tried to adapt. They altered launch angles, modified altitudes, and increased the number of missiles fired. Yet nothing worked. The Allied network, powered by VT fuses, consistently outpaced German countermeasures. This technological superiority became one of the decisive factors in the failure of Germany's missile campaign in the West. The human element behind the VT fuse continued to play a crucial role. Radar operators, young soldiers, officers, and engineers all contributed to the system's success. Each interception required precise coordination. Every missile destroyed in midair represented the culmination of meticulous planning and human skill. The success of the VT fuse had strategic implications far beyond individual cities. With V-1 attacks largely neutralized, Allied airfields, supply lines, and infrastructure were secure, allowing forces to focus on offensive operations. Resources that had once been devoted to defending against V-1s could now support the final push into occupied Europe. The fuse exemplified how intellect and innovation could outweigh mere numerical strength and raw firepower. By the end of the war, German V-1 operations were almost entirely ineffective. The VT fuse had saved thousands of lives, preserved cities, and created a strategic advantage for the Allies. It stands as one of the most extraordinary examples of how technological innovation can alter the course of history. The day when 82% of V-1 rockets were destroyed became a landmark in the history of air defense. It demonstrated that battles are not won only on the front lines. Engineers, scientists, and secret technologies can decisively determine outcomes. Today, the VT fuse is remembered as one of the greatest engineering achievements of World War II. It saved countless lives, protected entire cities, and demonstrated the power of ingenuity in shaping the course of global events. Each successful detonation was a testament to human skill, foresight, and the profound impact of technology on the outcome of war.